if I had to start photography all over again, transporting myself from here to 4 years ago, what would I do differently with everything I know and all the skills that I've acquired? Well, that's what I want to talk about in today's videos. I made all the common mistakes when I first started photography. I bought too much gear, I focused on all the different camera settings, and I didn't focus on what really mattered, and that's taking photos. I was focusing on my photography style and trying to develop it instead of letting something like that happen naturally the way it's meant to. So this idea that I've had has sparked this video that I want to do, and hopefully whether you're a beginner or you're like me who's been taking photos now for quite a while, you'll hopefully find some use in understanding the mistakes I made when I started, and if I had to talk to my past self, what I would now do differently. The very first thing I would do is to not make your photography journey all about the gear. If you're just starting out fresh, you probably already own a camera. Typically, everyone has a smartphone and they have some fantastic sensors inside them now. And whilst they're not the same as a Fuji or a Sony, they're a very good place to start with. You might even have an old family camera that you can use, something that maybe your family used to take on holiday that you could now adopt to get more of that sort of camera experience. Whatever it might be that you can use, I assure you that is enough. People take some fantastic photos with very limited gear, and you do not need a very expensive camera to get you started. The main thing that you should be trying to do is get into the habit of taking photos. That is far more important than what you're taking the photos with. It's like anything, building a habit takes a long time to ingrain it and remember and to do. So don't worry about the gear, worry about taking photos. Do things like training your eye. Composure is a huge thing within photography. Learning more about light and how it interacts with different scenes is the most valuable thing and the number one thing, in my opinion, within photography. And just getting comfortable pressing the shutter button. It might be that you're in a big city with lots of people and it feels very nervous that you're invading people's privacy taking photos. So get comfortable taking photos in different scenarios and in different scenes. And before you know it, you'll be well on your way to improving as a photographer. And I think also by taking this approach and this method, we'll move on to my next point, but it'll allow you to understand the type of photography that you like, what really interests you, maybe what type of photography you're good at, and then the camera that you do end up buying or however you wish to invest in your photography hobby will be more appropriate to the type of photography you like. Remember, what matters is building that core habit. Moving on from my last point, let's say you're now ready to buy a camera. You've saved up some money. It doesn't matter how much, because you can buy a camera for as much money as you manage to save. But let's say you've saved up enough money to buy yourself a camera. My personal advice would be to pick a camera that fits your lifestyle. It sounds really obvious, pick a camera that works for you. But I think it's really often forgotten when we're watching videos like this where influencers and camera brands are trying to get you to buy their biggest and latest and greatest camera equipment. But we forget about deciding to pick the camera that we actually maybe need or want that fits our use cases. Let's say, for instance, you're a baller, you've got lots of money, you've got thousands of pounds to spend on your first camera, and you buy the biggest and best Sony or Fujifilm system you can get, which is typically a big full frame camera with a big lens. Yet maybe you don't go out and shoot during the week and you don't do landscapes. Let's say you only get to shoot on the weekend because you're busy working like I am. Maybe you go out with family and friends, or you've got kids or partners or whatever it might be. You've got a busy life because at the end of the day, photography for a lot of people is a hobby. So you've got this big and bulky camera. Let's say you've got to pick up your kids. Not that easy to do. But maybe a small point and shoot camera would have been a far better option for you, given the type of photography you like to do and the type of lifestyle that you have. Vice versa to that, you might have a lot of time and a lot of money, and you do have a lot of free time, so you can go out and take those landscapes. Whilst I don't recommend you buying the latest Sony camera with the biggest and baddest lens, having a point and shoot camera probably isn't going to work very well for you. Again, think about things like your proportions. We're all different shapes and sizes, and for you, maybe a little point and shoot, you might have massive hands and it just is uncomfortable to use, therefore you don't want to use it. Vice versa for that, you bought this giant full frame camera, maybe you're quite a petite person and it's, a heavy system to lug around your neck or however you want to carry it. So again, you don't use it. So think about the camera you want based off what you already do, your other interests and how you normally spend your life, because that's how I picked the X100 because it fits my lifestyle. For instance, I go out with my partner. So me and her go out date nights or restaurants. So I wanted a camera that would blend in with an outfit and look good. Well, it ticks that box. I didn't want to be faffing around with deciding different lenses. It ticks that box. I wanted access to Fujifilm's recipes. It ticks that box. It's a modern camera, which you can also take some video on. Ticks that box. So you can see how it worked well for me. No camera is going to be perfect. I do a lot of landscape photography, and I do have 50mm adapter for the camera, which helps. And I have things like mist filters and extra grips to make the camera more comfortable for longer photography sessions. So no camera is going to be perfect, but that's my use cases, and that's why I now have the camera I have, because I thought about it. I didn't just buy whatever camera. I bought one based on my lifestyle. And one more thing, don't underestimate how a camera looks to you. It might sound really superficial, but pick a camera that you like the look of. I think the X100 is a gorgeous looking camera. And every time I pick it up, I'm like, I want to take photos with this camera. Whilst Sony's and Canon's lovely cameras, in my opinion, they're very utilitarian. They do a job, but they don't look stylish. Some people, that is their style. They are very utilitarian. They like the products that just work. A bit like my Garmin, it isn't the sexiest looking watch, but it does the job. So it's either style over substance or substance over style. But whatever you do, don't forget that you should pick a camera based on your lifestyle and based on if you like the look of it, because you'll want to go out and take more photos with it because of those two things. Now, this section might make a few people a bit sad, but don't buy all the photography gear at once. In the early days of photography, I bought way too much gear that I now truly regret. I'm thankful that I was able to sell off a lot of that gear, but yeah, I bought way too much that I really didn't need. My advice instead, and something that I've shifted to since I bought my X100 VI, so I shifted from a Sony to a Fujifilm system, so a lot of things were incompatible or I just fancied a change, is I allowed myself to use the camera for months on end and then start thinking about, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have? So instead of watching a top 10 accessories you need for your X100 VI like I've done on this channel myself, I thought, oh, a thumb grip would be nice for the camera. So I got a thumb grip. Then a external grip cage on the camera. Again, I thought that would be nice to have on the camera to enhance the holding experience. Then I bought the 50mm adapter because I do a lot of landscape and portrait photography, so that works for me. I bought mist filters because I wanted that film look straight out the camera, so I bought the filter that worked best for me. I bought slings and bags and other accessories, and I've built it up to the point now where my gear selection is really niche and tailored, but works for me perfectly. I use all of it. There's no wasted accessories now that I own, which I'm really personally proud of and happy with, and simplifies my life. And again, it means I go out and take more photos, which is the whole goal, especially when you're learning, is to go out and take as many photos as you can. And your gear and the gear you bought should not be slowing you down when you're doing that. And there's also monetary constraints. Filters cost hundreds of pounds, grips can cost hundreds of pounds, bags, slings, it all costs a lot of money. And if you've just bought a new camera system, whether you think a new Fujifilm camera at £1,600 for an X100 VI is a lot of money or not, if you're a beginner, it is a lot of money. So you don't really want to be shelling out hundreds of pounds for all these other accessories. The only accessory you want to invest in is a big fat SD card. Everything else, save your money and wait till you fully appreciate and understand the gear you need. shoot everything. If I was starting photography today or tomorrow for the first time, I would be going out and shooting everything I possibly could find. The main reason for that is you're brand new, so hopefully it's interesting and it's exciting to go out with your new camera and maybe you've indulged in some camera gear and you want to, of course, go out and shoot with it. But the other more important thing that you need to be thinking about is the fact that if you do go out and shoot everything, the more you go out, the quicker you will develop your style and develop your taste and understand things like I've said, composure and light and how they interact and using your camera and muscle memory and all these kind of things will come naturally over time. But it depends how much time you put into it, like any hobby or habit. So go out, take your camera with you everywhere, even if you think it's ridiculous and you don't end up taking any photos. Always take your camera out with you and always see what you can take a photo of. Hopefully you'll be with people, or if you're on your own, fantastic, or not fantastic if you're lonely. But if you're with people, hopefully they're understanding of your new hobby and they give you the time to go out and shoot whatever you might find, and they don't mind waiting for you or stopping or going somewhere because you want to take some photos. So yeah, take photos of everything, get more comfortable, and you'll develop your style even quicker. Hopefully this next point won't trigger some of the people in the comment section, but if it does, leave a comment if you think I'm wrong about this. But I would not worry about the photography triangle. And what I mean by that is you have aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. They are the three main camera settings that determine what your photos look like and how you shoot. But in my opinion, I would not worry about that at all. What I would instead focus on is mastering one setting. What I mean by this is, let's say your camera has aperture priority mode. Focus on mastering aperture. Forget about all the other settings, let the camera do its thing in automatic and focus on aperture, what aperture does, how that affects your photos, what you like setting at, experiment with it, get good at it, and don't worry about your other camera settings. Then maybe move on to your shutter speed and how slow shutters interact with waterfalls or moving objects, or if you speed things up, you can get those really detailed and crisp shots. And again, leave the rest of the camera settings alone. Now, ISO isn't something that you typically play around with to get different effects and different shots, but it does have a big difference on how much light you're letting into the camera. And it's a good tool to use, as you might find that if you're shooting at night, maybe doing some street photography at night, you can whack up your ISO all the way to 6,400 and your photos still look crisp and fine. So you've got a mental image that ISO is safe, you can shoot with that and you're comfortable. So again, play around with things. Like for me, I shoot with an ISO of 500 as my base, which again took a lot of figuring out and identifying that I was comfortable shooting at that ISO for all my other scenes, which allowed me to use the other two settings and let them take priority, and the ISO can sort of just be chilling in the background. When it gets a bit darker, I then start bumping it up. But I know what my camera's ISO settings are, and I know what the camera is comfortable at and what looks good, because I've played around with that setting and just that setting. And then, before you know it, you'll have mastered all three settings. And the great thing about that is you've mastered them individually. You should then understand how they all work, and then you can figure out how they all work in tandem. So you'll understand that if you change one setting, what that might do to the other setting. And in my mind, it is a far easier and better way of mastering those three settings and mastering the exposure triangle than trying to figure all three out at the same time. And you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to take any photos. And I know I found it really difficult, and I wish that I hadn't tried to force myself to learn them all. And I just learned one at a time and then did as I've just said then. So yeah, pick one. If I did have to start with one setting though, it probably would be aperture priority mode. That's what I shoot in anyway for all of my photography. I've got my other settings sort of capped and set within a certain range, so I've got some control over them. But yeah, probably aperture priority if I had to pick one to start with, and then shutter speed, and then understand ISO. But you do what works for you, but just focus on one. Forget about the other two. Something else that I would do differently is how I set up my camera. When I first got my camera, I watched an endless amount of videos on how people set up their camera and the settings they used and the program, the buttons that they programmed and things like that. So then obviously what I tried to do was copy those people and replicate their settings, their custom buttons to try and improve my photography. However, this was a big mistake for the simple reason that I'm trying to copy what works for other people and not figure out what works for me and what settings and what buttons I use. So if I was starting again tomorrow, I would keep the camera bare. I would not change any of the button layouts and I would not try and program any of the buttons straight away. Instead, what I would do is pay attention every time you're going into your camera settings to find or change or tweak a certain setting and make a bit of a mental note of that. And then if you find yourself keep diving into the settings every time to change something, see how you can program that into the camera's buttons. Because the best thing we can do as photographers is build up muscle memory on how to use our camera. So then we're not thinking about how to take the photo, we just take it, it's second nature. So like for me now, my X100 VI, I think if another X100 VI picked up the camera, they could take photos with it for sure, but they'd be a bit weirded out by how I've set it up because I've set it up for me, but it's taken over a year to get to the point that I have. And I would assume it'd be vice versa. I know when I pick up other photographers' cameras, it's like the way they focus and how they use the camera is completely different to me. But they've had to build that up and learn that over time. So do watch videos, understand camera settings and how people like to do things, but don't take that as gospel. Understand, remember, and then when you're next in your settings, go, oh, maybe that one should be my custom button because I use it all the time. So that's just a little bit of a note, a little thing to think about when you're using your camera. The whole point is the camera should reflect how you shoot, not how someone else uses their camera. So build it up slowly, build it up naturally, and the camera eventually, with some muscle memory built in, should feel like an extension of you, pointing that way, not that way. So as you can get, we're at the end of the video, and hopefully you can see I would do things very differently now if I knew what I knew. But like most things, knowledge is king. We've covered the fact that I wouldn't be going after chasing gear. I'd be very selective with the camera that I bought. I would, of course, make sure it fitted the lifestyle that I currently have. I would shoot everything and fill up my SD card and my storage with all the useless photos that I've taken to identify my photography style and what I like to take photos of. I would, of course, focus on mastering one of the 3 settings that I was talking about, and I would take my time and gradually customize the camera to fit how I like to take photos. I think the big lesson I've learned thinking about this video and recording it is photography is about the process, not about the gear. So you should enjoy the process as much as possible and enjoy the fact that you're new. Once you've done photography for a while, you can get a little bit bitter with things, but if you're brand new, enjoy that. Don't worry about what you haven't got. Just enjoy the fact you're out taking photos and you're doing something new and exciting. But I'd really love to know, if you've made it to the end of this video, well done. What would you do differently if you started photography tomorrow? For anyone who's watching this that is a beginner, what would you tell them to do differently that you now do or wish you'd have started doing sooner? Or maybe what you wish you hadn't done? Drop it in the comments because I think this is a video that everyone can share their own ideas and their own concepts together.